Hey, good morning, my friend. It is Wednesday and it is hump day. Although I know some of you may have a shorter week than normal, but I am so excited. You probably could tell on Monday Morning Cup of Joe that we're going to be reviewing once again this book, Seven Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey, one of my favorite books of all time. It sold 15 million copies, as you well know, and translated into many, many different languages. And the reason it is because this is an excellent process to follow to live the life you were meant to live, the life that you want. Now, a few weeks back, we talked about habit one, and that is be proactive, take responsibility for your future. Habit two, begin with the end in mind. Create the blueprint, apply the blueprint. And then this third habit of put first things first is so important. And I love this particular habit because there's so much value in it. That being said, these three habits, when mastered, Stephen talks about the personal victory. When we can master the first three habits, we move from dependence to independence on a myriad of levels. So without further ado, let's dive in to the third habit, put first things first. Decades ago, before Franklin Covey was even Franklin Covey, I took a class called What Matters Most. And the presenter was a gentleman named Hiram Smith, who was the founder of Franklin Quest. And then later, Stephen joined the organization. And one of the things that Hiram said that really struck me is that we've got to stop thinking about time management as the clock on the wall. And I was like, well, how else do you measure time? His paradigm was that the important thing was not the clock on the wall, but events. Creating, setting up, and implementing the events that are most important in your life. Think about it like a wedding. You're going to get married. You don't just show up. Well, some people do, but you don't just show up with justice of the peace or a priest there, reverend, minister, and do that. It's planned. And so that's an event. What are the events that we want to have in our life? Maybe it's a vacation. Maybe it's in our career. Maybe it's in our personal relationships. All these things are events that we do have control over. And that's so important to remember. Remember, control is a key component to happiness. When we develop a sense of control for ourselves, we actually allow ourselves to be happy. Interesting, right? So remember that habit three focuses on relationships, not your calendar. Relationships are the most important component of our existence, of our lives. If we went through this life alone, it would, well, lack meaning. But in relationship with others, it creates passion. The traditional paradigm of time management focuses on, well, obviously, time. It gets into scheduling, control, efficiency, doing things faster, more efficient. That's not the paradigm we're looking at today. Things have changed. Insights have been created. And this is the exciting part of the third habit, putting first things first. You see, the traditional paradigm focuses on efficiency, getting more done in less time. You ever tried to get more done in a relationship in less time? It doesn't work too well, does it? No, it's interesting with relationships that fast is slow and slow is fast. Meaning when we build trust in our relationships, the connection that we create, once that is created, then we can work on that. We can make it to where it becomes more efficient because we have trust. That other person that we're in a relationship with knows that we have their best interest at heart and that we care. But if we try to go fast and that foundation hasn't been built, it doesn't work. You can't be efficient with a loved one. The new paradigm is about effectiveness. It's not so much about the clock on the wall with the old paradigm. It actually falls within the compass. Are we moving in the right direction? A direction that we feel good about in our hearts. Now, the clock has its place, certainly, when it comes to carrying out the tasks and activities that will move us further in the direction of the compass points us. We need to remember that the first thing in our lives will always be our relationships. And the activities are those things that help create solid memories and stronger relationships, both in our work life and in our home life. That's the key to this habit. Now, effectiveness in this habit is to remember that we put people first, relationships first, that our moral sense of principle and integrity, these are key. So again, relationships first, and then schedules, principles first, and then values, leadership, and then management, and the compass first, then the clock. So I want to do an exercise with you. What are the first things in your life? Just give me 3 to 5 of the top most important things in your life right now. You can pause the video and write them down. Now, let me ask you a question. One activity done superbly well. I want you to identify one activity that if you did superbly well in your personal life and your professional life, what would that activity be? Think about it. Look at those 3 to 5 things that you wrote down and ask yourself, these are the most important things to me. What is the one activity that you could do superbly well that would move yourself into the direction of improving your relationships at work or your relationships at home? Understand that relationships are the oil that lubricates the machine of your own personal progress. We can't do everything ourselves. We rely on other people, but we don't want to take advantage of those people. We want to have an honest and sincere relationship where it's give and take, that we provide resources and support to them, and they do the same for us. We're all in this together. You see, the importance of this comes from within you. It comes from your values. It comes from those things that you care most about. It comes from your values based on your principles. And it comes from within you. It comes from your values and your principles and your mission. Remember, back in habit 1, you began to draft your mission statement, what it is you're about. Again, referring to my friend Simon Sinek, your why, your purpose for being. That all lays the foundation for the actions that you will take. And remember, stop thinking time management, begin thinking event control. So identifying the events that are important to you to move your purpose forward, your passion, your why. Think in terms of what events that you could create that would manifest and reflect your values and your principles. But what about the everyday challenges that we have? When we do have challenges, we get the urgent, the unexpected, interruptions, things that draw us away from the work that we need to be doing. And why do we get drawn away? Because they're urgent. They scream at us, they stand in our way, they become obstacles. How do we overcome those is the important question. So let me illustrate. I'm going to pop out of the screen and show you a brief, an interesting tool that you can use to help improve your event control ability. So here we have what we call a 4-quadrant model. Now, understanding these quadrants are important from the standpoint that on the left-hand axis, if you will, we identify importance from the bottom being unimportant and the top being very important. And then the top axis would be urgent and not urgent. Everything that we do throughout our day falls into one of these 4 categories, these 4 quadrants. So let's take a look at quadrant 1, which is urgent and important. What we find in this quadrant are crises, things we didn't plan on, things that snuck up on us, emergency meetings, last-minute deadlines, pressing problems, unforeseeable events. These are, in a sense, time robbers because they take us away from our focus on our purpose, but they need to be dealt with. They are important. The next quadrant that I want to talk about is quadrant 3. And quadrant 3 is this quadrant of needless interruptions, unnecessary reports, irrelevant meetings, other people's minor issues, unimportant emails, tasks, phone calls, status posts, the list goes on. So if quadrant 1 is the quadrant of necessity, quadrant 3 is the quadrant of deception. They appear important. They appear urgent. But the truth is that they are unimportant, but show up as being urgent. They're interruptions. Again, they draw our focus away from what's fully important. Now, quadrant 4. Quadrant 4 is the quadrant that we use to escape or try to escape burnout. If we spend so much of our time in quadrants 1 and quadrants 3, we're going to burn out. And so we do things, trivial work, avoidance activities. You know, if we have a tough, difficult task or activity that we need to do, and we shy away from it simply because we just don't have the energy to handle it right now. We expend our break times. We spend time watching TV, using our cell phone, surfing the internet, going through social media, not for work purposes, but just to give ourselves a mental vacation. Now, look, we all need to be able to balance our life to avoid the burnout. And we can do that by taking time to take a hike in nature, you know, walk to the local park, play with the dog or the cat, decompress. There's nothing wrong with that. But these activities we do in place of knowing what we need to do simply because we're trying to combat the mental state of our brain that is burnout. Now, let's talk about quadrant 2. Quadrant 2 is our proactive work. Now, understand, it's not urgent. It doesn't demand our focus or our attention, but it is important. Proactive work, important goals, creative thinking, planning and prevention, relationship building, learning and renewal, like sharpening the saw, and True, honest recreation, that which gives our minds and bodies a chance to decompress, to rejuvenate. Now, oftentimes we spend time in quadrants 1 and 3 because we fail to really plan, to take the time and think things through. When we think things through, we identify potential problems that we may run into, and we identify how we can prevent or reduce the impact of those problems. All these things happen when we go through the planning process. But when we fail to plan, that's right, Carl, we're planning to fail. So it's important what we do or what we find ourselves when we don't spend enough time in quadrant 2 because it doesn't demand our attention like quadrants 1 and 3. Well, what happens? Quadrant 2 is the quadrant of effectiveness. When we spend less time, plan, preparation, focus, the quadrant 1 urgent begins to grow because we've opened up that amount of time to handle those issues. At the same time, we are less proactive and more reactive. This sets us up for higher chances of burnout. Now, if we focus in on planning and preparation, we're more proactive, less reactive, and look what happens to the urgent and important and the urgent and unimportant. They get smaller. And as a result, because we actually truly love to plan and prepare the future because it allows us to live our vision before it actually happens, we even lose some of the behaviors and activities that we find in quadrant 4. So I want you to think about all the things that you did yesterday and what percentage did each of those fall into in the different quadrants. Quadrant 1, the urgent and important. The quadrant of necessity, or quadrant 3, which is the quadrant of deception. It fools us into thinking that it's important. Or quadrant 4. This is the quadrant of waste. We just are not being productive and we're not really rejuvenating our body. Hey, look, mental breaks are fine, but when they start to take over your schedule, that can be dangerous. And then, of course, we have quadrant 2, the quadrant of effectiveness. We have to learn to say no to quadrants 3 and 4 because we have a stronger yes in 2 and quadrant 1. When we have a burning desire for our vision, for our mission, for our purpose, for our why, it's easier for us to say no to these other activities because the fire of those things burns hotter within us. And it's important to remember that we must live our life above the line in quadrants 1 and 2, hopefully predominantly 2. And by doing so, we reduce the amount of time we spend in quadrant 1. Now, this may end up being a 2-parter because, well, there was just so much good stuff that I wanted to share with you. And if you do get a chance, and I don't get any money off of this, I just found the book incredibly impactful in my life. Think about picking up the Audible or the Kindle version or even a soft copy of The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. That being said, I will see you next week, although Monday Morning Cup of Joe is on a holiday. So you can always catch up later. Enjoy your time off. I hope you're surrounded by family and friends whom you love and whom love you equally back. And until then, my friend, live well. I will see you then.